Today, I'm joined by Adam Sutton, real estate attorney, and we are discussing the most important things to consider when selling property on the North Shore of Long Island. A lot of sellers think that once they accept an offer, it's a done deal. In New York, it's just the beginning of the process. Adam, walk us through what sellers should understand before entering into legal contract.
The first thing a buyer and or seller should consider is getting representation. That's the most important aspect of moving forward to selling or buying property. By obtaining the correct counsel, mostly a real estate attorney, they will be able to guide you on how to prepare for the transaction. It's very important as a seller to obtain all the documents that you received when you purchased your home, including a title report, a title policy. If you ever had a mortgage, you want to make your attorney aware of that. If it was a mortgage that you had and you paid off, you want to make sure you have a copy of the satisfaction if it's available. These are all things that are going to help expedite the process. In return, your attorney then will be one step ahead of the process.
What are the legal steps sellers should take before they even put their property on the market? Is there a specific set of documents that they have to gather? There are certain things that they need to think about.
That's a very good question. And to be prepared, they should get the documents that obtained when they purchased the property. Most importantly, a title policy. There's very good chance the title company can no longer be in business if they held the house for a long time. And by having that policy, it will save a lot of time and know that you're going to be able to have a smooth transaction. In New York, there are certain laws about disclosures, and it's very important to be ahead of the curve with this disclosure.
And a lot of changes
Yes,
too
a lot
in
of changes
department.
that came in place recently, and you have a duty to disclose your own knowledge of the conditions of the property. So it's important to get that form and have it filled out in advance before you even list your property.
It's a property condition disclosure statement.
Yes, and currently there's 56 questions that are a part of that. So it's a detailed questionnaire about your knowledge of the property. It's basically, you can't withhold anything that you may know from the buyer. In addition, if there are any warranties on the home, you should have that ready if they're transferable. If you did a new roof, you should have that as well. As far as being ready to sell your property, it's not a bad idea to go through the home and see and make sure everything is working.
Correct.
Okay, you don't want surprises
Right.
at the inspection when that time comes. So if you know something that's not working, you might want to address it in the beginning or speak to the realtor and get their advice if it's something that needs to be addressed immediately or it's something that can be negotiated later on.
That's a very valid point because buyers tend to overestimate the cost of repairs, and what might cost seller to fix, buyer would probably take it off their offer in a significant larger amount.
Absolutely. I had a situation recently where a client knew that one of the windows was cracked and the buyer wanted $2,500 to repair it, and he had an estimate for $500.
Exactly.
So by him having that estimate prepared, he was a prepared seller. He was able to negotiate, and that became a moot point.
Based on that estimate. That's a really good point. Thank you. Many of Long Island North Shore homes are older estates. Is there any specific things that can come up regarding these properties, like title issues or otherwise?
Well, it's important when purchasing any home, but specifically the type that you mentioned, to make sure if there's any easements, because that's very popular in these type of homes. An easement is something where someone may have a right of way to use part of the property, and that can affect the sale. It could kill a deal if it's not disclosed properly up front. In addition, when you're dealing with older homes in estates like this, there's other inspection issues that may come up. Oil tanks could be buried in the ground. You want to make sure that there aren't any oil tanks in the ground. So it's very important to do a diligent search on the the property as well as the legality of the covenants and restrictions that could be on the property.
That's very important. You already mentioned certain things that can come up during the inspection, can potentially kill the deal, or buyers can come up with very high estimation of the certain repair or replacement, and therefore they're looking to get major deduction off their offer. So what sellers specifically can do to protect themselves? Like what I always recommend is do a pre-inspection. This can be a shorter version perhaps, so then we know exactly what's happening and what needs to be addressed. What are your thoughts on that?
A pre-inspection is great for a seller. It's preparing you. The small amount of money for it can save you thousands of dollars in the end. Because if you make that repair, first of all, it might be much cheaper than the next person or the buyer's quote that they get. But it also may prevent them, the buyer, from looking at the property with some type of negative, feeling about something that is not correct or not updated or maintained. So by doing that pre-inspection, it will bring light to many of the problems that will come up in a report. I always tell my clients, whether it's a buyer or seller, the inspector's job is to really call out any possible problem that can come up in the future. It doesn't mean there's going to be a problem or that you had a problem as a seller, but it does make buyers concerned and then want things addressed.
And it's also when sellers actually perform this pre-inspection, which I highly recommend to all of my clients. I think it shows that they're so enthusiastic and so consistent with the maintenance, right? So they know what's going on and there's no surprises, which is very important.
Absolutely. And also, you can get different inspectors to have different opinions.
True.
So if you did your pre-inspection and it said that something was fine and their inspector said they disagreed, now at least you could say, no, that's not what our inspector said, where you may not have that to go back to them with.
Great point. Excellent. Adam, in New York, we have an attorney review process after deal goes to contract. What does this process look like and what are the stages?
Okay, that's a very good question. And I get that question often with out-of-state clients because New York is very different than every other state.
In Florida, you have an accepted offer, you're automatically in contract.
Correct.
And then you do your inspections and then, here's completely different.
Absolutely. So New York is a due diligence state, meaning that you have to do your due diligence before you sign a contract. Where in other states, you sign a contract and then you do your due diligence. So that even includes your attorney review. So attorney review in other states, attorney won't review the contract until you're already in contract with a standard form contract, which obviously is not in your best interest. Here in New York, you need to do your inspection first. You need to do any other research that you want, because once you sign that contract, it's going to be a binding deal. Usually the only contingency you're going to see is that if you're getting a mortgage, that there's a mortgage contingency and that things will be in working order at closing. But it's very important that you meet with your attorney and get that contract signed, because if you don't have that contract signed, that offer is still available to anyone else to sign a contract. So there's no deal until there's a signed contract.
Yes, I always tell the buyers and the sellers for that matter, and frankly, that was changed on MLS, I believe, about a decade ago, when the offer is only considered accepted when formal contract of sale is fully executed. And fully executed means to sign on both sides.
And the deposit given. And one of the biggest questions I always have is, my clients don't want to send the deposit until the seller signs. And that is not how it works. The seller won't sign without the deposit.
That's true.
So it's very important to be prepared with your deposit for the contract signing.
Exactly. Coming back to the inspection, let's say we have an accepted offer and now buyer performed the engineer's inspection. And as we discussed, inspector's job is to find something. Even in brand new homes, I find that they have to point something out to justify their expense, number one, and number two, to basically give heads up what could potentially go wrong. Not necessarily it will, But let's say a buyer did the inspection and now they're coming back to the seller with either a list of repairs or some additional asks. What is your advice to the seller on how to save the deal, how to handle it professionally, and more importantly, in a timely manner? Because we know that timing kills all real estate deals.
Yes, it does. So I always defer to what the issue is and what the remedy could be. So if it's something that is minor and it's very clear on how to make it, how to make the repair, then you could agree to make that repair. But when it gets something that's a little more involved, okay, sometimes a credit can be better because you could make that repair and then get to the closing walkthrough and they're not happy with it. And now we're back at square one. So sometimes by giving the money, there's no variable there. It's a done deal once you agree on the money. But every aspect has to be weighed both, back and forth to see which is the right way to handle that specific repair.
That's a very important point. I agree.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
For the sellers of luxury homes on North Shore of Long Island, what are the tax implications? What taxes they should be aware of or think of when they selling their property? And if they selling it at the significant gain, is there capital gains that come into play? So anything pertaining to taxes that you can share with me.
Well, first, it's very important that you speak with your tax professional before entering into any agreement to sign a contract for the sale of your home. Most homeowners will get a $500,000 exemption on capital gains if they live there 2 of the last 5 years. So that's important to know that. However, when it comes to taxes and capital gains, if your property is not a primary residence and it was an investment property, you can utilize a 1031 tax exchange deferment, which would then put off the tax liability and roll it into a new property. So if it was an investment property, that's something very strongly you should speak to your attorney with. However, when it comes to taxes, not just capital gains, in New York we have also a transfer tax. And a transfer tax is based on the sale price. So that is something your attorney would discuss with you too. Depending on where you're selling, depends on the tax percentage.
So on North Shore of Long Island, I believe it's $4 per each thousand.
I like to call it 0.4%.
0.4%.
It makes it a little easier to understand. So it's a little less than 0.5%.
Okay. Okay, so let's say if I'm selling a $1 million property, I should expect to pay about $4,000
exactly.
In taxes, and that's a transfer tax.
Yes.
Okay. Walk us through the process of the closing. What actually happens at the closing table?
The closing is a very special day for all parties because it's either an exciting time or it could be a time where they're saying goodbye to a very important part of their life.
It could be emotional, and it's also, somewhat stressful because we've been to the closings that are...
Absolutely. So I always like to tell everyone there's no two closings alike.
Correct.
Okay? Because closings are not just paper, they're personalities all brought in one room.
And there's many of those personalities in the
absolutely.
same room.
And that's part of my job also is managing these personalities.
So let's go through so we have the seller's attorney, we have the buyer's attorney, we have the bank's attorney at the closing if financing is involved.
In New York.
In New York. Yes. Then we have
title closer.
Then we have, if there are brokers that represent buyer and the seller. So we have two brokers, and then we might have a mortgage broker in the room as well.
If it's a good mortgage broker, they'll be at the closing.
So full room, and then what actually happens? Now we're all sitting around the table at the closing table. What happens?
So, depending on which party you are, it will require what documents you're going to sign. So the buyer is going to be signing most of the documents because if they're getting a mortgage, they'll be signing the mortgage documents. Their attorney is going to be explaining them to them, and the seller will be signing the deed and the transfer tax forms and some affidavits for the title company. The bank attorney is going to make sure that everything is executed properly. The title company is going to make sure that that the clear title is being passed to the buyer. So everyone's working together. A lot of the papers are going to get passed around through the different parties for different signatures. And then hopefully there'll be a happy moment where the keys are exchanged at the end. And,
that's my favorite
and the
part.
checks are exchanged for the seller.
Exactly.
And everybody walks out happy.
From your experience, what is the biggest legal mistake that sellers do when they sell their property?
Open their mouth. That is the biggest mistake they make.
Less is more.
Less is more. You have a broker and you have an attorney. Do not talk. Be friendly, but do not give too much information, because information that you may be giving may be putting doubt or concern in someone else's mind. Buyers are skeptical.
Yes.
Okay. Buyers are thinking everyone's hiding something.
Correct.
And you may not be hiding something. You may be wanting just to share some joy that you had, and that may be something that to them might be a different point of view, and that can kill a deal or cause a lot of stress at the closing.
This is so true, and that's why I always coach my sellers not to be present at the showings, because if you're there during the process, buyers that are coming through the door, they're not your buyers, they're your guests. They don't feel comfortable. They might not open the closet or the drawer, and if they did not open that, it simply does not exist for them. And then one thing can lead to the next, and especially when sellers are present at the inspection. When inspectors start asking questions and the seller says one thing that leads to the next, that leads to the next, it's really could create a situation that's not pretty, to say the least. And again, no one is hiding anything. It's just that you have professionals. You have an attorney, you have a real estate broker, you have an inspector, an engineer, and everyone is doing their job to being a buffer and be a great communicator and really working together to get the deal done. And that's the common goal that we all have.
Absolutely. I always say that the seller is only there to break the deal up. If they're there, they're not going to make the deal. It's the broker that's going to make the deal.
Correct.
It's the attorney that's going to make the deal.
Correct.
So it's important, stay in your lane and stay away from the buyer until the time is right.
I agree, and I always say that the best transactions are when the buyer and the seller actually meet at the closing table.
And then they always say, we should have met before.
True.
Right?
And then they become friends.
And then they become friends.
And no matter how much, sometimes, some negative conversations or hostilities, even, through the deals, and not everything is so glorious. We make it that it is, but we also know that sometimes it's not so pretty. But at the closing, 99% of the time, everyone just likes each other, and it's all very positive and great energy, and everyone walks out happy.
Yes, it's there's a lot of stress and emotion that goes into buying and selling a home, and for some reason at that closing, it all gets that stress gets relieved.
Correct. Especially if you see a beautiful new family coming into your home and continuing kind of a legacy that was created, and it's almost like a passing the torch. Yes. Real estate is not just about finding the right home. It's also about all the legalities behind the purchasing process, and having the right team, right real estate advisor in your corner behind the process, kind of navigating the transaction is the most important thing. And I highly recommend you to a lot of my sellers and a lot of my buyers. And I really thank you for all the transactions and the way you handled all of my clients.
It was very enjoyable being here, and thank you for the time. And as always, it's always important to be able to work together as a team, and that's what makes it work.
The right team makes the whole difference.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Adam.
Thank you.
If you find this content helpful, please like this video and don't forget to subscribe to my channel.